Thank you. Yes, as mentioned, my last name, Bantjes, is actually Dutch South African. My father was born in Johannesburg. My two brothers were born in Durban. But I was born in Canada, and this is my first time to South Africa. I started off this trip with Sean Adams and Noreen Morioka and our friend Michael. We went on safari together, and we had a really, really fabulous time. And you can cue that image now. Okay. So the incredibly lovely woman on the left is, or on the right rather, is of course Noreen. And on the left is the drop-dead gorgeous ranger, Donald. And when I saw that Donald was going to be with us for 3 days, I could not believe our luck. The only problem that I had with Donald was that I couldn't understand a word that he said. I was having some problems with the South African accent. So as the time went on, we developed a number of sort of amusing misunderstandings of words, and as a result, Sean and Noreen and I have come up with our kind of own little vocabulary. So if you listen to us as we're around and about, you might hear us greeting each other with money, 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 money. You might, if we're about to meet somewhere, we'll say, "See you just now on the dick." But the best misunderstanding came from we were out on safari, and I was sitting in the position there that Noreen is right now, and Donald said something to me which was completely unintelligible, and I responded with my usual term of endearment to him, which was, "What?" And he said it again, and I said, "What?" And he said it a third time, and Noreen said, "I think he said, 'Your neck hair is rough as a dog's.'" Anyway, we really did have a fabulous time, and as Sean and Noreen, as you know, well, they kill me. So this is where I'm from. I grew up in Saskatchewan. It's in the middle of Canada. It's the prairies. And if things had turned out the way I had planned when I was 7 years old, well, I would currently be queen of the world. Alas, I am not queen of the world. But here's what happened. This is a picture of me at 17. Contrary to what you might think, that was not taken in the 1960s. It was taken in the 80s with the Volkswagen that I had that I painted with a peacock. So a little sort of early premonition of what was to come. But what happened was I moved out to Vancouver, and there was a company that was a publishing company, and somebody had very carefully planned and placed an ad for someone to work in this publishing company, and they had placed that in a bookstore with the obvious intent that whoever answered it or whoever went into the bookstore would necessarily be interested in books and would love to work at a publishing company. And I did answer that ad, but the unusual thing was that I went into the bookstore to get change for the bus. So it was, by a pure fluke, a pure accident that I ended up working as a typesetter for a publishing company. And this was my introduction to letter forms and to typography. And I became a book typesetter, which I did for 10 years. And book typesetting is a very rigorous, classical training in typography. It's very structured, it's very rule-bound, it's very hierarchical, and you learn the right way and the wrong way to deal with typography. And this training and this sort of diligence with type has really had a large effect on the work that I do today, even though the work I do now it looks nothing like this kind of classical work. So what happened after I had done that for 10 years was that I went out on my own with a business partner, and we started a design company. And we created, over the next 9 years, the usual gamut of brochures and business cards and invitations and posters and various things like this. And I found that after a while, I really felt that I was not creating anything that was particularly worthwhile. I was very disillusioned with the work, and I was, in a sense, I came to recognize my own mediocrity. And I really did not want to come to a point in my life where I was, old and looking back and feeling like I had never really tried to do what I really wanted to do. Plus, I hated my business partner. So, so I quit my own design company after 9 years. I walked away from it. And I allowed my income, which had been a relatively healthy income, to drop from what it was to zero overnight. And I just started making things. I started making things that were interesting to me. I wanted to work in a way that was much more personal and much more artistic. And I worked in all sorts of different medium, and I just started exploring ideas about type and words. I worked in various different mediums. These are in ballpoint pen, as is this one. This is from a series called You Me. And I contributed to, free things to small independent art magazines that just needed something to fill their pages, so to speak. And I made things of my own, and I sent them out to designers that I admired. But for a whole year, I earned no money whatsoever. I started to get a lot of very positive feedback from various designers, but I still wasn't earning any money. And I was freaking out. A year without an income was pretty much all that I had planned for financially. And after that year was up, I decided to borrow some money and just keep going a little bit further. And then, in the nick of time, I got my first assignment from Details magazine. I did this piece for a title page for their magazine. And then I got work from Wired. And after that, it just kind of seemed to snowball. This is another piece from Wired. There's a close-up of that. And it just became this. It really just never stopped after that. It was really quite miraculous. And so now I'm known for my kind of over-the-top ornamental work, my custom lettering, my handwork with lettering, my precise vector art, my patterning and ornament, some things that are sort of a little undefinable, which always makes me happy. I work in pencil and paint and on the computer. Whoops. And sometimes I work with photography as well. So my range is very wide, and it's very personal, and I've just been really lucky to be known for a wide range of things and been able to work on a number of different projects. And I'm very, very happy that I quit my company so many years ago. So all this while, I mean, essentially, I had been going through a kind of a midlife crisis, and all this while, I was realizing things about myself. It took several years, and I would have a sort of series of epiphanies, and I was realizing things about myself and my work and my life. And one of the first things I realized is that it's better to work for love than money. And that's not to say that I don't get paid. I do get paid. I need to, and I like to be paid. But I find that when I take a job because I feel I need the money, that I don't have a real interest in the job. I'm just thinking like, well, okay, I gotta get some money in the bank. It never works out for me. I have, problems with the people I'm working with, or I'm just like, I'm not into the project and I can't do it. Something always goes wrong. So it's very important for me to, have some sense of love there, either for the project or for the people. And sometimes even if I'm in love, I can draw from that and create work that comes out from within me. But that love thing is really, really important for me. I also realized that there's no wasted time so long as I'm making things. So I'm constantly creating things for myself or for other people. But as long as I'm doing that, I'm never wasting time. And much to my surprise, I have found that the things that I make for love sometimes just magically turn into money. And at some point along the way, I realized, much to my amazement, that I am doing exactly what I want to do. That if I was to win $10 million tomorrow, I would still be doing what I'm doing now. And that was a really great revelation to me, that I've come to that point where I ultimately want to be, no matter what. I realized that I'm a workaholic, but it's not really work. It's what makes me happy. Some people call me patient, but I'm not patient. Because patience is something that you need to have when you're doing something that you don't really want to do. And I'm doing the work that I do because I'm obsessed with it. It has absolutely nothing to do with patience. So I work all the time, but it isn't really work. It's just what I need to do and what I have to do. So back to this love thing, which is, as I mentioned, a really sort of big part of the work that I do. In 2005, I decided to start sending Valentines out to the people that I knew and clients and potential clients. So instead of Christmas or New Year's, I sent things out at Valentine's Day. And this was the first one that I did. It says, "Everything I do for love." And I printed it on a translucent paper, so it was very light and very ethereal, and it went in a translucent envelope and sent that out. And the next year, I did the same thing again on a translucent paper. This time, I did this piece, which is done in pen and ink. It says "True Heart." And I really don't care that it's difficult to read that it says "True Heart." People get the general idea. They either figure it out or they don't. But, it's not like it says "Emergency Exit." So, but in 2007, the year after this, I ran into a bit of a problem. Much to my amazement, I had become quite popular in the design industry, and I was actually being asked to speak a lot. And I was traveling all through December and January, and I really didn't know when I was going to find the time to make my Valentine and get it to the printer and have a week for it to be printed and everything. So I came up with this idea that what I could do is, maybe if I cut my mailing list back to 100 and 120 people, that I would just draw a single Valentine for each person. I would hand draw like about 100 Valentines. And I thought, yeah, I can do this. Like, I'll just, I'll do it while I'm traveling. I can do some on the airplane and some in the airport and, some in the hotel rooms, and, I'll get it done. And then I don't have to have a week for printing. So, I think it was about February 9th, I came back, I came back from traveling, and I had drawn 10 Valentines. My mailing list, I had slashed it back to the barest minimum of 150 people. And I thought, I'm in so much shit. There is no way that I can draw 140 Valentines and sign them and number them and scan them and put them in envelopes and get them in the mail in time for Valentine's Day. So I sat down and did it anyway. And I did draw 150 Valentines. Each one was different. Each one had the person's name on it. They were numbered. They were signed. I scanned them. And I got an overwhelmingly great response to this. I got nearly 100% response rate. People called me, they emailed me, they sent me things. And quite frankly, those who did not will never, ever receive anything from me ever again. So after that, that's a bit of a tough act to follow, but the next year, which was last year, 2008, what I did was I still wanted to do something personal. Oops, I still haven't got through these Valentines. I created an alphabet that was based on heart shapes, drew them by hand in pencil. And I had them printed on a pink translucent paper, and I had them cut up into little squares for the alphabet. And then I assembled people's names out of those and put in a couple of extra hearts and an M for myself, and I sent that out to people. And that also was very nicely received. This is a friend of mine, Nick Hoffermas. I include this one because he's also just so gorgeous. And then last year, I was offered a piece in Creative Review. Creative Review is a magazine out of the UK, and they do a special thing for their subscribers. Only for their subscribers, they get a little insert that they call monograph. And they offer this monograph to artists and designers and photographers to basically put whatever they want to into it. And I had been wanting to do a series of pieces for people that I love, people in my life, that were a little bit more wordy, sort of told a little bit of a story. So I created 16 of these. This one was for my best friend Jillian, and this one was for my other best friend Debbie Millman. This is for my brother Rod. This is done as a painting. My brother Michael. At some point in this process, I realized that I did not have a single piece for any of my actual boyfriends or ex-boyfriends in my life. So I decided to, do them all in one fell swoop. And I did All the Boys Who Loved Me Back, which is done in burned wood. And this is a piece that I did for my dad. I'm actually going to read this one to you because, it's illegible. Dennis Bantjes is my dad. He has big hands and was always strong. And in the way of good daughters, I believed and still believe he was the best machinist alive. I already screwed this up. It says he was born in South Africa and was a machinist by trade. Blah, blah, blah. Let me see. He has had a long line of cars. And because of him, I have always been fond of the smell of engine grease and mechanic's hand cleaner. And I was proud that he could change a transmission in the afternoon the way some people would change a spark plug. Now he lives in a town in Saskatchewan and wonders what to do with all his tools. Machines. So this year, Valentine's Day, again, I did something a little bit different. And I wanted to create something that was personal, but not really personal. And I decided to write 4 fractions of love letters. And I wrote these very specifically so that it's like a piece out of a love letter. It's very mysterious. It has no beginning. It has no end. I didn't address it to anybody. I didn't sign it. Though I did put their name on the envelope and that it was from me. But they were very specifically designed so that they could maybe have related to. They were sort of general. They were very personal, but sort of general, so that you might read it and actually maybe be able to get some kind of connection with it. I did them I printed them again on the pink vellum paper, but the originals are done in pen and ink, which they are here. And I wonder, I'm going to just read one of them to you. Not all 4 of them, but anyway, I'll go with this one. Wonder sometimes if you remember that time many years ago when you lived in that place and you were so certain you were wrong about all of it, you were ready to give up. And look now what happened since and how much has changed. Do you recognize yet that you are purposeful, that you have a heart not of gold but of pure, rich, loving, living, pumping blood that gives so much passion despite the small nicks and tears and tears you've endured over time? Can you accept now that you deserve forgiveness, that you've earned love and happiness is right here at your fingertips, waiting for you to pick it up? And as for this belief that you were better in your 20s, or that last year you were better, or last month, or yesterday, I really want to knock it into your head that it is today, and always today, and now, and now, and now, that you are better. With each year you become richer and fuller, and more of everything you want to be. I'm really hoping after all this time you see that this is the very... So, I imagined that I imagined that people would get this mysterious thing in the mail, and their first response would probably be, "What the fuck?" And they would look at it and they would think, like, "Well, is this to me?" And they would think, "Where's the rest of it? Did Marian screw up?" And they would look at the envelope and they would say, "Oh yeah, it really is to me, and it really is for Marian, but what is this?" And then maybe they would read it a second time, and maybe a third time, and that maybe they would actually get something really personal out of it, and that it would touch them in some way. And I did get some responses from people that most gratifyingly told me that it arrived at a time when they were feeling bad and that it made them feel better. Somebody told me that it arrived literally minutes after he had just found out that his ex-girlfriend was dating somebody new. But my best response was from a guy named John Langdon, who is a brilliant letterer himself. And I've actually never met him. I've only been in contact by email with him. And he said, "I've been waiting so long for the missing page. It explains so much." And I just thought that was brilliant. That was like the perfect response. He just walked right into my fiction and gave it back to me. And I was just overjoyed that he wrote that to me. So another thing about my work is that, aside from this whole love thing, is that I really need to figure things out. And I think this is the thing that actually makes me still a designer, is my need to I don't like to just, I don't doodle, I don't do things that are purposeless. I need to have some kind of structure and be able to figure things out. So this is a piece that I did for The Guardian newspaper in the UK. They have a magazine that goes with it called G2. This was done in December 2007. It's their puzzle special. So they had this puzzles. The whole thing was full of puzzles, and they wanted a cover that was sort of puzzling but not too puzzling. And so I started with making some little tiling units like this, which have a purpose, which I will reveal in a moment. And then I can put them together and flip them and rotate them to make kind of patterny things. And then I can kind of combine those and make a kind of complex sort of patterny thing. But the most important thing about the way I designed this was that each unit was designed to be a part of a letter form, so that I could fill in those parts and have words come out of there. So you can see that's exactly the same thing. There's the word that pops out when I fill in those parts. And then I can fill them in various different ways to make the words either recede or come forward from the background. So then in the puzzle special, what I did was I made everything multicolored and had some of these fill-ins in other areas of the piece. And I was able to work with the art director of the magazine and bring those words forward and take them back till we got them to just the right point that it was puzzling but not too puzzling. Then again, I did this piece for Bill Drentel hired me to work for his client, Stora Enso, which is a large paper company which has now been bought. But they were doing a series of posters, which the brief was only that it had to be this dimension, this size and dimension, and have the word sustainability on it. And that was the entirety of the brief. I really like briefs like that. So I was thinking about this idea of sustainability, and I was thinking about what it means, and that I was thinking about generations, preserving things for generations. So I wanted to have a sense of history, and I wanted to have a sense of family, and some kind of connection for people. So I had all these various shapes that I filled with photographs, with archival photographs of people from various different eras, all different kinds of people, to give that sense of time and continuity. And then I also created two different pattern tiles. So I created a pattern that was based on historical forms, it's quite classical, and then I have another one that's based on more contemporary forms like extruded plastics and those kind of rounded forms that we use today. And here's the sketch for the historical pattern form. And this again was created very specifically so that I could get all the parts of the letter forms that I would need, so that I could create letter forms right out of the pattern. So here's how that works. Here's the sketch put together, and then just by filling in those certain areas, I can get the letter forms out of it. And there's how that works there. So I really wanted to create something that was not just, a background and then plop some type on the top. I wanted the entire thing to be integrated, and then by doing a lot of color manipulation, I was able to get something that from a distance looks like a tree in a sky. Sometimes figuring things out is not so much planning. Those other ones were very carefully planned and drawn up and put together with a lot of structure. This is a piece that I did for Stefan Sagmeister. He has a book that he calls Things in My Life I've Learned So Far. So this was one of his phrases. I created it for him 6 times in sugar. And here's a detail of some of these. I don't have all of them because we don't have a lot of time, but in this instance, I had no sketch. I had no, nothing that I was tracing or plan or anything. All I had was a white page with the crop marks drawn in, and I would put the sugar on it and work with the sugar and kind of let the sugar do what the sugar wanted to do. And each time I did that, and then I would shoot it and destroy it and start over again with another one. So each one was quite different and delicious. This is another of my love stories. Oh, beloved dentist, your rubber fingers in my mouth, your voice so soft and muffled. Lower the mask, dear dentist. Lower the mask. So, yeah, I have a sense of humor. I like to work humor into my work whenever I can. Here's a piece that I did. This is hand-drawn lace. It's lace of muscle men. Can you see the muscle men there? And to go with that, I have muscle cars. Here's another of my love stories. Delicious cake, your smell so sweet, it brings me to my knees at the oven door. I lick your taste from my fingers and sweep up your crumbs. So I also do commercial work. I've worked on some big projects. This was a project that I did for Saks Fifth Avenue. I did this first with Michael Barut from Pentagram. Michael is a friend of mine, and when he calls me to do, I'll do anything that Michael asks me to do, basically. So this is a campaign that Saks does. They do it twice a year. They call it their Want It campaign, and each time they come up with a completely different look for the Want It thing. And this time they wanted something that was really kind of like over the top, crazy, frenetic, want it kind of thing. And so I worked with Michael on this, and I'll be honest with you, this is not my favorite piece of work. It has no structure. It's just some words and a bunch of curly stuff. It's, like whatever. So the time came to do. They have 18 trend items that they identify each season, and so then the time came to do the words for those trend items. And Michael and I both assumed that they would just want the word with just some more swirly stuff, and so I did a few sketches and sent them off, and I got a phone call from Michael, and he was really kind of sheepish. He sounded a little bit embarrassed on the phone, and he said, this isn't really what they want. He said, what they want is, well, I don't think it can be done. So, just stop me. If you don't want to do this, you can just walk away from it right now. I really don't mind. But what they want is they want the words to look like the things that they are. And, you want to walk away, just do it. I totally understand. And I said, now I have a challenge. This is interesting. This is difficult. Now I've got something to figure out. So I did this drawing, and at this point, Michael handed me directly over to his client, Taryn Schaefer at Saks. And this started a good, long relationship between me and Taryn. So here's the final of Cape. I had a wonderful time working on this. Taryn is just a fabulous person. He's now my favorite client. We got along like wildfire. Working on these things, some of them were easier than others. Here's Puffy Vest. Had a bit of trouble with Puffy Vest. Puffy Vest, Puffy Vest, Puffy Vest. Finally got it. Some of them were not even things that you could really identify and hold in your hands, like shine. I really had a hard time with this. It wasn't there. I thought I had it here. They didn't like it. This is just like, it's a porcupine. At this point, I was getting really desperate. And then when I landed on this one, well, it just seemed so obvious that that's what it would be. So here's 16 of the 18 wanted items. We got high heel and gentleman's bag. And then, so the thing was, this is what I created. I did these in vector art. I handed them over to Saks Fifth Avenue, and they've got a big in-house design team. And they just went away and did, whatever it is that they were going to do. And they invited me out to the launch of the campaign in New York, and I went out, and I was just totally blown away with the store. They had this on the window displays outside. They had covered the walls with it. They had it cut out of plexi and swirling around on this thing in the big, in the middle of the store. They had a different treatment on it on every single floor of the store. They had it hanging from the ceiling. They had cut it out of carpet. They had it swirling around in lights in the back of the store. It was mind-blowing. And as Michael Beirut so adeptly put it, he said it was like an infestation of Marian Bantjes at Saks Fifth Avenue. So I worked with Taryn again last year. He wanted me to work on their Christmas campaign. They do snowflakes every year, and this is again another example of where things that I did for love actually turned into money. He had seen the Valentines that I had done, and he really, really wanted me to do something that was kind of like that for these snowflakes. And he wanted me to create 30 different snowflakes that were each very, very different from each other. Some of them were very loose and quick, and some of them were very studied and detailed. And I drew these in pencil, and of course I knew that they were going to be white on a background, so I sort of drew them in reverse, kind of like the negative of them. And so here is I believe there's 30 snowflakes there that I drew for them. And once again, I handed these drawings over to Saks, and they turned them into bags and put them in the catalog. They cut them out of foil, and they did them sort of as shadows. They made hats out of them. They put them all over the store. I don't know, some of the stuff they did with them was really weird. I don't know what the fuck that is, but they cut them out of stainless and hung them from the ceiling. In the window displays, done in lights, again in the window displays, and they put them in little crystals on the windows. It was just totally amazing. So great to have that kind of magic happen, all by itself. And amazingly, they hired or commissioned rather, I think 13 really high-end jewelry designers to create one-of-a-kind pieces out of these, and so these are like ridiculously expensive. They range from I think the most expensive one was $82,000. The least expensive was $12,500. And no, I did not get one. Let's see, where am I? I also do sometimes pro bono work. This was for an organization called AED Social Change, and they promote design for social change. And they had asked me to do a poster called, all it had to do was say "Design Ignites Change." They had done one the year before, and given it away. It had been a 2-color poster, and I was thinking about this idea of change, and I really wanted to make a poster that did change. That depending on how you looked at it, it would look differently. And I came up with the idea of laser cutting it. But I knew that laser cutting was well beyond the 2-color print budget. So they actually, originally they did have a fee for me for this, but I wanted to do this so badly, I just told them that, basically I would pay for the laser cutting. I gave them the money back, and we laser cut these posters so that depending on, what you're holding it up to, it looks differently. The light shines through it. Here's a close-up of that. And then the other thing about the laser cutting that I liked was that it has this sense of ignites, because this is very difficult to see, but when you laser cut paper, it leaves a slight burn mark on the paper. And usually what you do is you cut from the back to minimize that burn mark, but I had them cut it from the front so that you got that kind of burn, so it's got the ignites in there as well. It also casts a beautiful shadow. And they were going to give these posters away, and I told them, no, no, you will be sending posters out to all my friends. So I talked them into selling it, and they did that, and gave the money. Proceeds went to help AIDS orphans in Kenya. And the poster sold out in 2 days. So we did a second edition, and this time we did it in silver foil on copper paper. So it also kind of has this changeability to it, this sort of shine. And I actually think they still have some of those left. And I'm constantly changing. I really don't like to be pigeonholed into one sort of thing, so I'm always kind of experimenting on people when I can. This was for a speaker series on sustainability. They had this green event, and they swore up and down that it was not your regular green event. They wanted it to be different from the usual sort of green leaves and that kind of thing. So I gave them racing stripes. Makes sense to me. But I was able to like put on all the sponsor logos, and this is sort of based on those stickers for models that kids used to play with way back in the 70s. And then I had a client who was they're Australian, and they're a wine distributor, and they wanted to make a poster to give to all of their various vineyards. They had something like 200 or 100 and some vineyards that they work with, and they wanted to have all their names on this poster. So my first thought when I got this assignment was, well, I'm certainly not going to do anything with grapes. And then my second thought was, grapes. So what I did was I did 26 drawings of letter forms. I drew different varieties of grapes and kind of worked the letter forms into each grape in various different ways that looked sort of semi-natural. And so 26 of those plus a few extras for spaces and hyphens and things. And I arranged those on the poster. I placed, I think, 2,130 grapes in Photoshop on the poster. And I was very pleased that I got the exact response. They gave this at an event to their growers, and everybody kind of looked at it and then realized it was grapes, and looked at it closer and realized that it was there were letter forms and that they made words, and then they were all sort of standing around trying to find their own names in the posters. So that was exactly what I wanted them to do. I'm often asked to judge design competitions, and at some point I was really sort of questioning what my own criteria was for judging design. And I also started to wonder what my own criteria was for judging my own work. And I came up with this list. This is a little list that I have taped to my desk, and I use it to evaluate the work that I'm doing. And these are kind of like the 5 basic things that I need to have in my work. And does it bring joy? Is there a sense of wonder? Does it invoke curiosity? Could it inspire? And is it unusual? And if everything that I make has to hit at least one of these, preferably 2 or 3. If I get all 5, I'm rockin'. If I get all 5 plus it's funny, I've hit it out of the park. This is the last piece from the love stories. I'm going to read it to you. It says, Marian Bantjes was my mother. She died December 22nd, 2006. She was born in England and probably should have never left, as she was eccentric in a way that would have been perfectly normal in Britain. But she had many close friends in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, where she settled and raised 3 kids on her own, and worked, and put herself through university, and was actively involved in countless political and women's organizations all at the same time. Then she taught sociology. She had dogs, Dunya and then Phoebe, who was an undeniably bad dog. She had cats, Huffy and then Suki, who was an undeniably bad cat. She was small like a little bird, despite eating a lot of bread, butter, honey, and chocolate. We were very close, though I regret being cruel when I was a teenager. She cracked me up. She would have liked these colors. I miss her like crazy. So this is where I live now, on Bowen Island, near Vancouver, BC. And one of the most important things that I discovered about myself, or have realized over the past 4 years, is that I am extraordinarily lucky. I live in a wonderful place. This is my garden. And I'm just so fortunate to be doing the work that I'm doing and living where I'm living and be invited to places like Cape Town, South Africa. So thank you for having me here.